All right, guys. So I'm going to give you the anatomy of how Ron DeSantis brilliantly plays the media for his own political advantage. This guy has become a master at the art of working over the media and getting the right-wing base to love him. It's honestly impressive. Now, in the process of doing it, he is a relentless liar. But he does it nonetheless. So here's Judd Legum of the Substack Popular Information. And he says the following. This thread will lay out the playbook Ron DeSantis uses to repeatedly manipulate the media. Follow along if interested. First, DeSantis makes a splashy announcement with a simple, misleading narrative. Last week, for example, he announced that 20 people were arrested for voter fraud. Quote, Governor DeSantis announces the arrest of 20 election criminals. So, I don't know, you guys probably saw these headlines all over the place. I certainly did. Now let's look at the specifics. Second, DeSantis uses these simple announcements to generate headlines that benefit him politically. In this case, DeSantis is trying to appeal to Republican voters who believe that Biden stole the 2020 election from Trump. DeSantis's announcement of these arrests, a campaign-style event held in a Florida courthouse, successfully generated that appeal to Republican voters looking for validation of Trump's false claims about election fraud. And he has a whole bunch of headlines here. New York Post, Florida busts 20 ex-cons accused of voter fraud, DeSantis says. Fox News, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has 20 charged for voter fraud. All these headlines, right? Even CBS, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis election police force announces arrests of 20 for voter fraud. Now, by the way, let me pause for a second just to say this. Even if this stuff is true, it changes nothing. This is nowhere near any amount to overthrow the election. Now, I get that the argument is, well, we found 20, maybe there's like thousands more or something, bro. There's an implication there of like, see, this is a real issue. But, you know, the study on its own is like 0.0004% voter fraud, like some preposterously low number. But anyway, let's continue. DeSantis' announcement had lots of political theatrics. Republican activists sat in the jury box waving signs saying, my vote counts. But there were few specifics offered on the individual cases. A review of the court records for the 20 people charged reveals why. This isn't a bunch of people seeking to manipulate an election by voting illegally. Many of the people charged were told by Florida officials they were eligible to vote. Huh? So, wait. These people voted legally, but now you're saying they voted illegally. Let's see what else he says. Peter Washington, for example, this is one of the people who was an election criminal, is a 59-year-old man who was convicted of attempted sexual battery in 1996. During his assimilation class in prison, he was told by a probation officer that his civil rights would be automatically restored upon his release from prison. So this is the case in a lot of states. When you're in prison, in a lot of states, you lose like your right to vote. Obviously, you lose all these other rights because you're in prison. But then right when you get out, all your rights are back because you served your time. You got your punishment, and now you're out. And so all your rights come back, of course. Subsequently, Washington received a voter registration form in the mail, filled it out, and was provided with a voter card from Orange County, Florida. Washington also reported he received jury summons on 3 separate occasions, which he reported for. In Florida, jury service is unavailable to ex-felons until their civil rights are restored. So in other words, it was a fact his civil rights were restored, which means his voting rights are restored. Washington and the other 19 individuals were charged with 1 count of false affirmation voting or elections. But that charge requires prosecutors to prove that the accused acted willfully. In this case, Washington genuinely believed he was eligible to vote because he was told that by a parole officer, received a voter registration form in the mail, and was summoned for jury service. The final step of Ron DeSantis' media manipulation playbook is counting on the media and the public to lose interest as the truth slowly trickles out. For more accountability journalism that doesn't lose interest in the truth, check out Popular Information. So he's doing a little plug there. Ultimately, whether these charges could be proved at trial may not matter. Most of the individuals targeted by DeSantis have little education and few financial resources, and they are being threatened with the full resources of the state of Florida. One individual charged with voter fraud was reportedly arrested at 6 a.m. when a SWAT team banged on his door, a helicopter circled overhead, and armed officers were posted in his backyard. He was not permitted to put on clothes and was taken to jail in his underwear. Most of the defendants have already spent much of their lives tied up in the criminal justice system. In response to charges of voter fraud, they have had to come up with hundreds or thousands of dollars to post bail. The pressure to plead guilty and resolve the situation quickly, especially in exchange for a favorable sentence, will be enormous. DeSantis used the exact same playbook when he falsely claimed that math textbook publishers were targeting elementary school students. He generated the headlines he wanted, and by the time the truth came out, most of the media had moved on. So, look, in other words, this was all a ginned up issue. This was all a totally phony issue. These people had the right to vote, or at the very least, the way the system portrayed it, they had the right to vote. And now DeSantis is using this simply to score cheap political points, simply to get the headlines, generate the positive press, and then in turn bolster his chances to run for president and win, whether it be 2024 or 2028. This is what's going on here. Now imagine wasting these resources like he is. Imagine wasting these resources. Imagine a SWAT team busting down a guy's door who voted and probably was able to vote and should have been able to vote, but you're busting down his door, and it's all for this idea, this vague notion of trying to bolster Donald Trump's bullshit arguments and crack down on voter fraud. The guy is a political hack. He's a scam artist. That's what he is. And he got caught red-handed here. Props to Judd Legum for actually doing the legwork. This is what happens. Anytime you dig deeper into, a lot of these claims from the right, they all fall apart under the tiniest amount of scrutiny. Just always keep in mind about Ron DeSantis, man. He's a master at manipulating the media, getting those positive headlines. But the fact of the matter remains, the dude is against legalizing marijuana. The dude is not in favor of a $15 minimum wage. The dude cracked down on free speech and free protest in Florida in the most egregious way possible, flipping the liability if a protester gets, if a car drives over a protester, they flip the liability. Hey, maybe you had it coming. That sort of stuff. He did this whole anti-woke shit as it pertains to Disney, and he made it seem like he was cracking down on these woke corporations. He wasn't doing that at all. He shifted the tax burden to working class families in Florida. We've covered that in detail. More Perfect Union had a great video discussing DeSantis' record and how he postures as being anti-corporations because they're woke, but really he's super serving the corporation. So the guy's a fraud. This is another example of him being a fraud, and I think that's clear. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.